Well, you guys knew this video was going to show up at some point. I had to do it. So you're thinking about buying an M156 powered car like this. I'm currently sitting in my 2008 Mercedes CL63 AMG. If you guys haven't seen the video, it's the last video I posted. Check it out. I bought this car for super cheap, less than 10% of what it costs new. And there's a reason for it. It's very broken. Well, not very, very broken. It's clear I'm driving it, but it's broken. So the M156, let's kind of dive a little bit into it. So the M156 is the first engine that AMG solely developed by themselves, that they didn't use a platform from Mercedes. Previously, before this, they would use engines that Mercedes had already came up with or already built that were in cars, and they would just modify them. Perfect example is my other car, my W211 E55. That car uses Mercedes's regular old M113 that the crazy minds at a Falterbach strapped a supercharger on, bored it out to 5.4, and made it an absolute monster. So that specific car that uses a base engine for Mercedes, the M113. Now the engine in this car, the M156, was solely developed by AMG in-house. They didn't use any kind of Mercedes engine. They didn't use any pre-production or anything from Mercedes. They developed this thing on their own. So 6.2 liter naturally aspirated V8, no turbochargers, no superchargers, none of that. Solely just a naturally aspirated big V8 that produced different power outputs in the different model variants that it was in. More specifically, depending on the car you got, was also the amount of power you would get. So for example, you bought a W204 C63, the base M156 car came out with like 460-ish horsepower, whereas this was like the big body. This was the flagship M156 car before the SLS. This had 518 horsepower. So same engine, no differences, just different tunings and power outputs. Now, the M156 is a legend. I have always loved it, but I have made videos before. I said I think the M113 is a better engine, and I still stand by that. I think the M113K is the best engine AMG's ever made. Just my own personal opinion. That's why I've had that E55. That's why I have sunk so much money into the E55. Yeah, okay, let's get over that because I'm going to get depressed. But I love that engine. I mean, it's my favorite engine Mercedes ever built. Now, the M156 is a legend, but it does have its glaring problems, such as, well, we'll get into that because there are quite a few problems that this car suffers from, or this specific platform suffers from, that really Mercedes should have addressed, but they kind of swept it under the rug. Well, some of them didn't, but let's get into this. So the biggest problem, the most glaring one that everybody will tell you when you're like, oh, I'm looking at a C63 or E63 or S-Class or something or whatever. The biggest thing people will tell you on the forums or in groups or people that have worked on Mercedes is the headbolt problem. It's out there. This is the most common thing these cars suffer from. So what am I talking about? So as you guys know, the way the engines are built, this is not just for Mercedes, every engine. You have the block, and then the cylinder heads are bolted with specific torque to yield bolts to the block to make sure that you have that perfect seal between the block and the head with of course the head gasket, to make sure that the coolant that is running through the passages to cool the motor doesn't seep into the cylinders to wash them out or hydrolock or cause problems, things like that. That's why when you have a blown head gasket, you'll see the car will burn, or it'll have white smoke because it's burning coolant. Now, the thing with this car is, or with the M156, is the original design for the head bolts was a Torx bolt. So here's some pictures right here what they look like. It was a Torx bolt where you would use, like, I believe it's like a T45. You put it in, of course, tighten it and whatnot, torque it down to yield, and then never reuse them again. Whereas most other ones are just regular old star bolts, as you can see here. This is actually what the updated bolts look like when Mercedes updated them. But the problem with the original ones is they were just weak. They weren't good enough, and when the coolant would run past them, they would corrode. So here's some pictures you guys can see of corroded bolts. This is what they look like, and here's the main difference between what they look like and the newer ones. So as you guys can see, there's more material in the new one to make sure it's sturdier. Now, most cars that suffer from this are earlier M156 cars. I will put a link down below to, there's a serial number that AMG has. These are the cars that would be affected by it. So here it is. Now, here's the thing. Is it blown out of proportion like the Porsche IMS one? kind of. Is it a problem? Yes, it is a problem that AMG glaringly overlooked. I mean, they, like I said, addressed it afterwards, but for those original cars, it's a problem. So if you have an M156 car, specifically, I don't know, E63 CL, S-Class, whatever, from 07 to about 2000 and late 2010, about 2011, I think like middle of 2010 is when they switched over. So if you have a car from those years, your car is more than likely affected by the headbolt issues. Check out that list below and look into it. But moving on, we have the cam lobes. Now the cam lobes, this is what they look like. What these things are is they sit just under the camshaft and over the valves. What their job is they're supposed to open and close the valves. So of course, you know, open the valves, let some air and fuel, close them, things like that. Now the issue with some of these is they would lock up. So they would just seize and lock up, and then as the cam is turning, because it's not constantly moving, the cam would start wearing it out unevenly. And you would notice that on specific tappets, or, you know, whichever term you prefer, tappets or low, or the whatever you prefer, whatever term. But on the tappets, you would notice that there would be an uneven wear. So this is what a normal one would look like. This is a worn out one. So as you can see, there's a difference. And then of course, that would also put wear on the cam lobes. That would cause problems with some of the cars. At that point, you need to pull them out, replace them. Now, Mercedes did provide a fix. The fix was in the SLS. Now, that engine is called the M159. It's still based off the M156 6.2, but it's a little bit, it's got some upgraded things for the SLS, specifically the SLS Black Series. That's a really popular mod, or a OEM Plus fix to do to these engines, is to add that tappet, or to replace those to go ahead and be sturdier and not seize up. But yeah, that's another thing that Mercedes or AMG kind of overlooked, that they should have used better material. Now, leading into another problem that's, I'd say, just as glaring as the headbolt issue, would be the camshaft adjusters. Now, the way you know you have bad camshaft adjusters on an M156, if you start it up cold in the morning and you hear rattle coming from the engine, like if you hear that when your car is cold, that means you have a bad adjuster, or it's or it's already going bad. It's on its way out. There's a fix for it. There's these little magnets that they sell now. They're the front, like on the adjusters. You just replace them and it fixes your problem. Now, if it gets bad enough, you have to replace the adjusters. This one hurts. There's 4 adjusters because it's a dual overhead cam. Each one is about $700 to $800 at Mercedes. Do the math. Let's just use 800. 4 of them, that's $3,200 for adjusters. And if you don't do the work yourself, because to be fair, you've got to take the timing chain off of them and everything. So if you don't feel like a DIYer, or this is more in depth than a normal DIY job, I don't know how much the labor is. I'm probably going to say over $1,000. So you're looking at maybe about $5 grand. Now, this is a thing that Mercedes never really addressed. Even some like 2013 and 14 C63s, the late cars have this problem. So unlike the headbolts, this wasn't addressed, and it's prevalent within the AMG M156 community that pretty much every single one of these engines will have that problem. So you may be able to get a really good deal if you're looking at a car like this, to maybe you know, go around and buy a car like this with bad adjusters. If you hear it, make sure if you're checking a car out like this, a M156 car, whether it's a C-Class, CL, whatever, make sure you tell the person, ask them if you can see the car at their house. The reason why is because you don't want them to start it up and let the engine warm up, because if it does have bad adjusters, most of the time you will not hear the rattle after a warm startup. It's only on cold startup where you'll hear it. So ask them when you're checking the car, I'll be like, hey, is there any way I can come to you? I really want to see the car cold. Because then if you start it up and you hear it, then you could probably use that to your advantage. Be like, hey, the car has bad adjusters. It's going to cost me $5 grand to fix it. Because when you replace them, you can't really replace one. You should replace all 4. It's kind of like the old school theory of, if you're going to change the shock absorbers on the car and the front or the rear, like the Aromatic or the ABC ones, you don't just do one. You really mostly do like you do them in pairs. But with this, you do them all together, because if one's already out, more than likely another one's already on its way out as well. So that's a glaring problem. That's something that Mercedes really should have addressed. Now, overall, as you may have noticed, most of the problems with the M156 are top end. There's nothing really bottom end. These engines are pretty stout when it comes to the bottom end. unlike some other German competitors where you have to replace rod bearings at a certain interval at like 50,000 miles. But I don't know what brand that is. I mean, I've never, you know, nobody would be crazy enough to do that on an engine. But yeah, no hate towards the M5. I love those cars. But yeah, the M156 is a good engine. It's just got its problems, which, to be fair, a high performance car, I mean, there's no excuse for the problems that this engine has. AMG should have been a little bit more careful when it came to that, but at the end of the day, it's, you know, production stuff. But now this thing, there's a reason I love these engines, and there's a reason people love these and they're legends. I mean, listen to this. Oh my God. And we're above the speed limit. Speed limit here is 50, I hit 51. So the thing with the CL is, and I know we're only talking about the M156, but I kind of want to talk about this car in general. If you're looking at one of these, the CL is such a comfortable machine. I mean, it's always been the two-door S-Class. This car can get you in a lot of trouble because that 518 horsepower it's pretty good. This thing weighs about 4,600 pounds, and when you get on it, it picks up, it goes, and it makes a great noise. And let's just say you'll get in a lot of trouble because you're flooring and you're like, oh, I'm not going that fast. You look down and you're going pretty fast because it's got so much weight and it's so comfortable. You don't really feel the car accelerate or go as fast as it really is. So this thing's a beast, absolute beast. I love this thing. And if you're shopping for one of these cars, make sure you make a list of the M156 problems and you go and inspect it. You should always get a pre-purchase inspection, not just for if you're buying a car with the M156. If you're buying a car in general, you should get a pre-purchase inspection because you never know. You never know what might be going on. You know, unfortunately, there's a lot of scummy people out there that will sell you cars that they patch up. So you should always check, you know, do your due diligence and everything. But yeah, M156 a legend. I love this engine, especially in like cars like the C63 Black Series, the SLS Black Series. I mean, with the right kind of exhaust, these cars sound mental. So if you have that setup, if you're able to do, you know, if you're able to get one of these, you should. Of course, they're a little bit more temperamental than the regular, let's say 550s or whatnot, but in my opinion, it's worth it. I mean, it's a beast of a car, and it sounds really good. I mean, aside, if we're not counting the V12, this is the right engine for the CL. It's got plenty of power, plenty of torque to let this thing to keep going. But aside from the M156, the CL's got its own quirks and stuff like that we should really talk about at one point because yeah, there's a lot of interesting things with this car. But let me know down below, what do you guys prefer? Do you guys think the M156 is a legendary engine? Do you think it's a turd? Do you think AMG should have kind of owned up to a lot of their mistakes? There was a lawsuit out there for the camshaft and for the adjusters that Mercedes ended up actually winning the lawsuit, and the reason for that is I'm assuming they just have really good attorneys. So yeah, that lawsuit didn't really go anywhere, but thankfully they did end up fixing the headbolt issues. Unfortunately, a lot of the cool cars with the M156, I mean, I'm not saying there's not cool cars afterwards, but a lot of the cool cars like S-Class CL, they got their engine switched over to the later engine, the M157, before they were able to fix this thing. So yeah, let me know down below what you guys think of the M156. I still prefer the M113K. I think it's definitely my favorite AMG engine. It's a beast. I mean, bulletproof reliability, supercharged, endless tuning possibilities. There's a lot of tuning possibilities with this engine. They sell supercharger kits. I know VRP has a kit. WiseTech does. Speaking of VRP, if you guys are interested in getting a discount for your AMG or anything, hit my link. I'll leave it down below. You get 8% off, so you can do that. Get some nice parts. They're having a Valentine's Day sale. I don't know if it's over at this point. It might be already over depending on when you're watching the video, but check it out. Let me know, let me know if you end up picking up anything. Also, let me know what you think of the CL or the M156 in general. Are you a fan of this car, or do you think that Mercedes really, for lack of better terms, pooped the bed? There we go, GL63, nice. With the 5.5 twin turbo V8. It's kind of a shame Mercedes never built a GL with the M156. That would have been a really cool thing to see, like the first gen CL, or GL, excuse me, first gen GL. But so we had a little bit of a technical glitch. I didn't notice it till we were editing. I think the GoPro overheated or something, but as you can see, it's a different day. I'm wearing different outfits. So what I was saying in that video was I had wished they had made a GL63 with the M156, but Regardless, if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe. Let me know down below what you think of these problems on the CL. Some of them are very expensive, some of them are very expensive. But yeah, let me know down below what you think of the M156. I think it's a legendary engine. It's definitely one of the greatest AMG engines. It has problems, sure, but I mean, what legendary engine doesn't have problems? Like I said, the BMW S85 V10 chews rod bearings for breakfast. So yeah, let me know down below and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take it easy.